Why did a UCF Economics student decide to create a worm poop fertilizer company right here in Orlando? I bet you don't get that question every day. Welcome to the Orlando Real Estate Lifestyle Podcast, where we explore the intersection of Orlando real estate and your best life. I'm Phil Kruse, here to help you make the most out of your journey in the city beautiful. Today, I will be interviewing UCF's own Sam Baker. He's a UCF grad and the winner of UCF's Joust New Venture Competition in 2022. Think of a Shark Tank style competition. And he won because of his company, Wriggle Brew, which is a growth accelerator. Don't you dare call it a fertilizer. All right. And it's made from, you guessed it, worm poop or casings or castings, amongst other things. I'm sure Sam will be able to correct me there momentarily. Now, he turned his success at that UCF competition into an actual company, and you could even buy his products on Amazon. And oh, by the way, he's done this before the age of 25. How does that make you feel out there, huh? Sam, welcome to the Orlando Real Estate Lifestyle, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, I feel like I should be bowing or something.
I think I could have pumped you up even more, man. You have an amazing background, and at such a young age, that's just impressive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For the listener out there, Wriggle Brew, as you're going to learn, is for lack of a better description, it's a fertilizer, just to use layman's terms. And if you guys are interested in purchasing Sam's products, he is on Amazon. So just hop on Amazon, search Wriggle Brew, right? Like a worm wiggling. You'll see it. I've already bought mine. And you can go on his website, wrigglebrew.com. Easy to find there. And today with Sam, we're going to be talking about how he went from an economics and chemistry student to a business founder, how he won the Shark Tank style competition at UCF and how that vaulted his business, some of the details of what Wriggle Brew actually is. And then finally, some fun stuff like the coolest thing, Sam, who is a self-proclaimed part-time inventor, one of the coolest things he's ever invented other than Wriggle Brew, of course. Now, before I pull Sam back in, for the listener, I want you to remember that I'm a real estate agent, and one of my main lead sources are listeners like you. So when it's your time to make a major real estate decision, think of me, Phil Kruse. That's Kruse with a K, Kruse. I'm all over social media. Just Google me, Phil Kruse, Kruse. Throw Orlando, throw real estate at the end. You're going to find me on Instagram. You're going to find my website. And remember, a portion of all my commissions goes to charity. I work and volunteer at I don't work for, but I volunteer at the New Image Youth Center that supports underprivileged kids from the Paramore area of downtown Orlando. That's where I choose to donate some of my commissions. Or if you have a charity of your choosing, I will gladly send a portion of my commissions from working with you to that charity. And while you're at it, jump on my podcast, your podcast platform, Spotify, what have you. I'm on YouTube as well. I'll have all of Sam's information there, his website, his Amazon link, and also my cell phone number. I'm an open book. I'm here to help. Shoot me a text or send me an email, whatever is more convenient for you. All right, enough for the shameless plugs. Sam, let's bring you back in. Thinking about your story and how I can imagine you got started. I can imagine you studying for an economics test at like an outdoor courtyard at UCF at a bench, and you look down at the ground and you see an earthworm wiggling around after a rainstorm, and that's when you have your aha moment.
I wish it was that inspired.
So seriously though, how does an economics student go from just being a regular old UCF student to the founder of a worm poop fertilizer company?
In a lot of steps and very confusedly. So originally I was a chemistry student. I was just a chemistry student. Me and my best friend Gabe, we were both huge chemistry fans. So we had gone to the same high school up in Sanford, which is just north of Orlando. And at that high school, we did science fair like 4 years in a row, got very, very into chemistry and science, did a lot of science experiments in my backyard that were of questionable legality. And when we started as students at UCF, we were allowed to work at the AMPAC Nanomaterials Lab. And that was a really cool gig for a lot of reasons. But one of them was we got to continue a lot of the research we had started in high school. And at the time, we were working on materials called activated carbon. So you've probably seen like the activated carbon, like toothpaste. It's like black. People make like activated carbon bread.
Water filters, right?
Water filters. Yeah. So it's the reason why it's such a a fun gimmicky material is because it has a really high surface area. So we were using it to build capacitors, which are kind of electrical device that holds in a lot of electrical charge. And we were curious about different ways to get activated carbon from compost, from manure, from all kinds of different sources. And Gabe happened to be really interested in learning about earthworms at the time. And he shows me this YouTube video of this guy in Puerto Rico farming earthworms,
Yeah.
which was something I didn't even know you could do that, you know?
Right.
Because when you think of a farm, you think like, you know, it's gonna be big animals or chickens or whatever, but people
Sure.
farm invertebrates, they farm bees, and they also farm worms. So they have these big beds, these big, you know, wooden boxes, and they'll dump a bunch of food in there. They got a chicken wire over the top of it so raccoons don't get in, and then they fill it with earthworms. And the worms they're great for bait. Fishermen love them, and of course they make this wonderful compost, this wonderful manure. We thought originally that might be a good source of activated carbon, but it also turns out to be really, really good as a fertilizer material for feeding plants. And the reason we cared about that is kind of incidental. It was sort of accident. I would go fishing with my grandpa a lot, and there's this spot. It's kind of like near Lake Harney. I don't know if you've ever been to Lake Harney, but here in Central Florida, we have these chain of lakes, and they're really good fishing. And my family's been in Florida for like 7 or 8 generations. We've been here since the 1800s.
Represent.
Yeah, I know. If you ever go to North Florida, there's a county called Baker County. My last name is Sam Baker. That's us. That's
Wow, cool.
it's not the
Celebrity here.
not quite. But so we go fishing. Me and my grandpa did, and this fishing spot, all the fish were dead. And the reason that happened is because we had fertilizer runoff. So regularly, as you know, we have the growth of houses, as you know, we have the growth of nurseries and golf courses and things. People put out a whole bunch of new lawns and gardens and all kinds of stuff, and often they'll use fertilizer and too much of it sometimes. And the result in this case was a fertilizer runoff event killed all the fish, which was extremely distressing to me. You know, because I'm thinking to myself, you know, if there's an 8th generation of my family here, where are they going to go fishing?
Right.
If all the fishing spots like this are screwed up. So I went back to Gabe, back to the lab, and I said, hey, Gabe, you know, is there any way we could shift our research to working more on this fertilizer end of things? And he's like, well, you know, the earthworms we've been looking at, they make really good fertilizer. And one thing led to another, and our research just spiraled out of control, and Wriggle Brew was the result.
Wow, that's such an amazing story. And I love how it stems from your love of nature. It's something I can super connect with. I live on a lake. And, you know, fertilizer is a huge issue for the entire ecosystem of the state of Florida. The Indian River Lagoon has had a massive collapse, and a lot of scientists are pointing their fingers at fertilizer and septic systems, and it's a thing. So I love that is kind of your genesis story there. Pivoting just a little bit, you are a UCF Knight, as am I. Go Knights.
Charge on,
baby. We got a game today. Actually, the day of this recording is UCF's first game. You going to be out there?
No, I got too much work.
Yeah, I feel you. Well, I'm going to escape my wife and kids and get out there today, if that's okay.
Godspeed. Please enjoy it for me.
I will. Maybe too much. But we've all seen the show Shark Tank, super entertaining. And a lot of us have had dreams about creating a product or business and getting to pitch them to the sharks. I mean, that's sort of what you did at UCF's competition, the Joust new venture that you won in 2022, and seems to have been a major launching point for your career and your business. So can you describe that process to us, and then also describe how indeed it helped make have you take that next step?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of my favorite stories to tell because it's really interesting. And winning the Joust, and getting ahead of myself here, winning the Joust was in many ways less of a financial victory. There is a financial prize, but more of a morale and a mental victory. Because when we won that, we suddenly thought, okay, this is serious. Now we really are a business. We really need to take this, you know, to the next level. And it started because, so Gabe and I, we were doing our research on Wriggle Brew for at this point several years. We started it basically in 2018, 2019, really 2019, and it carried on until 2022. So we were at this for basically 3 years doing the research. And so we heard about the competition at UCF, And right, like you said, it's kind of like a Shark Tank style competition. They have judges, they have like a big table, and there's multiple layers to it. So in our year, I want to say like 80 teams actually fill out the competition forms and went through with it. But then they whittle it down to like 60, and then the 60 gets whittled down to, I want to say 16 for the semifinals. Then those 16 get whittled down to just 4, and then finally there's the finals, and then they select a grand prize winner. In our case, we really didn't think we were going to win because there was some very, very stiff competition. Really good companies were a part of this. There was a really cool company that was doing drone photography. There was a company with Microsoft backing, another with backing from Google.
Oh
So
my.
some big names were flying around. And here we are making worm poop juice in my garage. But our product has a lot of advantages, and the idea has a lot of advantages. It's very interesting. I was talking about how fertilizer is a big problem. You were talking about Indian River Lagoon. There's all these waterways and areas in Florida that are affected by fertilizer. But we also have 1.5 million jobs that rely on it. We've got landscaping jobs, we've got horticultural jobs, we've got agricultural jobs. And of course, people love having beautiful gardens and they love having beautiful lawns, So you can't just ban fertilizer. So if you can create a fertilizer that doesn't have the runoff effect, which is something earthworm castings don't have, but is just as effective or more effective, then you've got a really, really good replacement, something very competitive that can be a disruptor. And so we kind of leaned into that in our presentation. We made our first presentation to the Joust. They liked it. They didn't get back to me for about a week or so. And that's where things got kind of complicated because I was still working in the lab and we were actually doing a research trip out in California. So my PI had paid for us to fly all the way out to a place called Bodega Bay. It's rural.
What's PI?
Principal investigator.
Okay.
So the guy in charge of the lab, basically, the head honcho. So
okay.
We're out there doing research, and we're in the middle of the rural Northern California. And I get an email that basically is like, hey, you've moved on to the semifinals. Congratulations.
Wow.
You need to be at the semifinals on Wednesday. And I'm supposed to be in California till Friday. And I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah.
So what do you do? I mean, my PI he's not gonna, pay for me to fly back, and because all these funds are already allocated. And I'm in the middle of nowhere, so I can't exactly just go to the airport downtown. There's no downtown. So I got up at like 5 a.m. and I got the bus to the nearest major city, which was a place called Santa Rosa. And I paid $500 to an Uber, which was like a huge amount of money, to go down to San Jose, where I then spent $1,500, which at the time, this was basically all of my savings, to get an airplane ticket. There was a red-eye flight that would land me back in Orlando at 5 a.m. I slept in the parking lot outside the College of Business, and then I ran in and I did my presentation, and that's how we made it to the finals.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and the funny thing is I never told anybody this, except I think I told my girlfriend and stuff. I didn't tell any of the competition people or judge people this. And when I told them this a year later, they were all like, what? But that's how we got to the semifinals. And then we went to the finals and, we presented and they gave us grand prize.
And what was the grand prize?
Grand prize was a really big cardboard check for $15,000. And it was a huge morale victory. Like I said, we spent the money partly on a minivan and on tents and on a bunch of other equipment, some nice barrels, a welder, so I could actually weld some of our equipment together. I crashed the van, but other than that, the other equipment went a long way. So,
well, I'll tell you, Sam, that is an amazing story. I hope you reimburse yourself for those unexpected travel expenses as well with that money.
I don't know if I actually did or not.
Uh-oh. We got to tell Gabe. It's coming. The expense report's coming.
Maybe so. But it was a hell of an adventure. I'll tell you that.
I bet. And what a story. What a great thing that you'll be able to share with the future employees of your business and that kind of stuff. You're going to be you already are an inspirational character. And that's just one of the little pieces that adds to your story. Now, before we go into Sam's, the coolest invention he's ever made and getting into a little bit of the members of his teams that do things like read chemistry books for fun. I'm talking to a listener now. Just hook a brother up and subscribe to my podcast. If you like hearing interesting guests like Sam Baker with Wriggle Brew, who is a local UCF, you heard 8th generation or 7th generation Floridian. These are the type of people I want to expose you to. Restaurateurs like Bruno Zucchini with Pizza Bruno, the owner of Orlando Power Yoga, the best yoga studio in Orlando, Kelly Sen. The list goes on. The poet laureate of the city of Orlando, Sean Welcome. These are the type of people I'm exposing you to. Like and subscribe me on YouTube, hit the bell, or on Spotify or Apple. You're going to get a notification every Monday when this and all other episodes drop. And of course, some of the episodes are going to be real estate. This is the Orlando real estate lifestyle. So you never know what you're going to get. You're going to learn something about Orlando, something about real estate, or something about some of our cool people, or something that can help you in your personal life. And of course, don't forget about my real estate services. Search for me, Phil Kruse. That's Kruse with a K, Kruse. Throw Orlando, throw real estate. You're going to find me. A portion of all my commissions go to charity. All right. Moving on. Now, a lot of people don't know this about me, Sam, but anytime I hear it from somebody else, it's always something that endears and bonds us together. The fact that I'm an Eagle Scout, and so are you. And what a lot of people don't know is you don't say you were an Eagle Scout, because you are an Eagle Scout forever. Right. And scouting is an amazing program, and it's something that exposes young kids and even girls and young women to the outdoors at an early age. You already touched on this, but how did scouting and then your subsequent exposure to the outdoors help you create Wriggle Brew?
Scouting was probably one of the most important things in my life. It's definitely one of the most impactful things I ever went through. I was a Cub Scout from, like age 5 or 6 all the way to
Tiger Cub.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was a Tiger Cub.
Me too.
Yeah. So it's a long road, but it's really, really worthwhile. And yeah, you are an Eagle Scout, and I still have my Eagle Scout card on me. I keep it in my wallet.
Nice.
I have it right here.
Cool. He's if you're not watching on YouTube, he's digging into his wallet right now to get that.
There we go.
To get it out.
That's it right
nice.
there.
Yeah, he's holding it up. Beautiful thing.
Card carrying. And
yes,
being an Eagle Scout means a lot, but the process of being in Boy Scouts was huge. I mean, we went camping. I don't even know how many times. I had over 160 nights of camping logged when I was done. Tons of hikes. Had some amazing times with some of my friends and brothers. And Scouts was also really important to me because my dad wasn't really present in my life when I was a kid.
Okay.
But every Wednesday I was at Boy Scouts, and every once a month we'd have a weekend where we'd go camping. So I had these father figures around me because there were all these different guys who were, a lot of them were like veterans, were former military, and a lot of them taught me a lot of lessons, like taught me how to shave, taught me how to, stand up for myself, taught me how to be a leader, stuff like that. I learned all of that in Boy Scouts. And you do it in an environment where you're outdoors, where you are immersed in nature. You're immersed in the natural world where, you're a tiny part of a much bigger environment. That had a really big impact on me. And it's one of the reasons when I came to UCF, I was both very interested in doing environmental research, but I founded a club at UCF called the Knights of Trash. I know, right? Everyone always laughs at the name, but we would go around campus and we'd pick up litter. We went on little crusades and we would grab, like bags, and we would pick up trash. And it was nice. It was fun. And it was also a little shocking to realize just how much litter kind of ends up, like around the student union in places like that.
Yeah.
It was kind of eye opening because you think, people tend to think that young people are more environmentally savvy or thinking about sustainability, but there are just as many people who are willing to litter in Gen Z as there are in any other generation, I think. And so I had to pick up a lot of their messes. But the result of all of that was I became very passionate about the environment, especially Florida's environment. Florida is one of the most beautiful states. We have some of the most amazing wetlands and Everglades and rivers and lakes. And so when we, experienced all this runoff, Wriggle Brew seemed like a natural thing to dive into.
Yeah, I love it. And it's just hard to even unpeel back your own life experience and fully understand how those sorts of camping trips and being exposed to the outdoors fully shaped you. But we both know that we're deep rooted in that. My mom was the director of Zoo Miami, and like I just grew up outside all the time. And one of the reasons I wanted to live in a lake in Orlando was not for me. I'm not a big wakeboard guy. I wanted my kids to if I was blessed enough to be able to afford it, I wanted my kids to be able to have full exposure to what Central Florida has to offer. So I hear you, and thank
Yeah,
you for sharing that.
you're welcome.
I'm going to pivot again, and I'm going to preface by saying that every single weekday, I'm up at 5 a.m. I write a gratitude journal and a mindful practice. I do grounding, and I end up in the gym at 6:15, or I'm paddleboarding on my lake. One of the things I do occasionally during that morning practice is I write down something that I like to call dumb ideas. And the reason I call them dumb ideas is because it removes the pressure from myself to have to come up with a good idea. If we're all sitting there trying to write a brand new idea, an invention, if you will, and say it has to be a winner, you're going to have writer's block immediately. You're just not. So I'll just start writing down things like, rocket shoes, or, edible shoelaces, something but it gets my idea muscle,
Yeah.
exercising. And every now and then I'll write down an actual semi-unique idea until I Google it and find out somebody's already done it.
Yeah, I feel that. So many times it's happened.
The reason I preface this is because you actually describe yourself as a part-time inventor. Obviously, you did legitimately invent a business here with Wriggle Brew, but what is the coolest thing you ever invented other than Wriggle Brew, whether it's useful or not?
So I have a couple answers to that because I'm
Sure.
always debating what's coolest. But I actually do the same thing as you. I have my own book of ideas. I keep it in my desk, and every time I get an idea, I write it down. I draw a little diagram to try and describe, what it is and how it works.
If you're not watching on YouTube, he's pulling his journal out, which has the periodic table on the cover, and showing us his ideas. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's important to write these things down because you'll forget them, or you'll misremember them. I especially have this problem. Like, you ever have like a really good idea and like a dream, and then you wake up and you can't quite remember it? It's like it's the same exact thing. So my coolest ideas, I have some ideas that are very useful, and then some ideas that are not very useful. I'm going to start with probably the useful one that's actually relevant to Wriggle Brew, and this was sort of a joint idea between me and Gabe. But it stems from Wriggle Brew. So originally we were investigating earthworms, because earthworms can eat garbage and produce manure, but some worms can actually eat plastic waste as well. And in eating that plastic waste, they only really do that when they're starving, but they digest it. They fully destroy it.
That's crazy.
So our idea was to isolate the microbes from the gut of some of these plastic-eating worms, and to produce what's called a bioreactor, which is basically a chamber that simulates the gut of the worm with these microbes, and to feed in the plastic into these bioreactors, and in doing so, destroy the plastic, and of course, turn that into hopefully more fertilizer on the other end. The reason you use a bioreactor rather than worms is because it's much more efficient and could be hopefully scaled up. That was a really cool idea. And so what we did with that idea is we actually pitched that as a research project to the National Science Foundation. And they really, really loved it. And they actually funded us $275,000 to pursue that idea.
Wow.
And that we did that for from August of last year, 2023, up until July. We just finished that. And we were successful with that. We actually got the worms, the microbes out of the worms to eat the plastic waste, which has been really, really cool. And now we're pursuing more funding with that. Hopefully we can scale that up. But yeah, they can eat, these jars that we've built, these bioreactors can eat about 450 grams of plastic waste in about 5 days.
What's that look like, that 450 grams? So like, can you quantify that in so many plastic bottles roughly off the top of your head or something like that?
So for context, it's right now it just works with polystyrene plastic. So that's like styrofoam, like stuff like that.
Okay.
So mostly it's coming from like foam sheets from like industrial waste. Here in Seminole County, about 5% of our waste stream is polystyrene waste.
Wow.
So there's a lot of it. And so 450 grams looks, in terms of size, like, well, that's close to about a pound of plastic. You know? So 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So 450 grams is kind of like 1 pound. So 1 pound of polystyrene plastic is quite large. It's, maybe as big as like close to the size of like a mini fridge, I would say, maybe a little smaller than that.
Okay.
So it's pretty big. It's a lot of stuff. We compress it down and we get it into a liquid, and then the microbes eat it and go crazy. That's probably my coolest invention, and that was me and Gabe. The coolest invention in terms of usefulness.
Right.
I also came up with windshield wipers for scuba goggles. Someone else, made a version of that too, so that was kind of out. And one of my other cool ideas was I came up with a automatic like rapid firing musket, which is not useful at all, but is very funny.
Cool. Like a musket, like a muzzle loader type.
Yeah, like a
Deal?
muzzle loading musket, but it shoots like automatic fire, and you can reload it really quickly. It's it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. All right. That's an Eagle Scout talking about that firearms right there for you. I
Yeah, I
got my
got the
rifle
rifle
and
there.
shotgun merit badge, but that's
Yeah,
that's the best I understand.
there you go. But, I mean,
Um,
that's a lot of fun. So
it was a lot of fun, especially shooting the pins that were hold the targets on and really make the scoutmaster upset. I was that kind of kid. Um, Sam, many of our listeners out there, of my listeners out there, are homeowners and they use traditional fertilizers, or they have a fertilizer service or company that sprays their yard. So I want to ask kind of a two-part question. What are the key differences between Wriggle Brew and traditional fertilizer? And then how can the average homeowner utilize Wriggle Brew at their home?
So there are actually a lot of differences. One of the big differences between a fertilizer traditionally and something like Wriggle Brew is that the kind of nutrition you're getting is very different. So with a traditional fertilizer, these are synthetic compounds. So they're things like ammonia, urea. We can think of them kind of like the steroids of the plant world. They're compounds that really help plants to grow, but long term, they're not necessarily the best for the plants or for the soil. Wriggle Brew is different. It's much more like a healthy diet or like a probiotic. It is literally actually full of beneficial microbes that we brew into it, hence the name Wriggle Brew. But it's also chock full of nutrients that plants really, really like, but you would just never find in a natural or in a normal fertilizer, synthetic fertilizer. So these include things like humic acid, fulvic acid, and plant hormones and other kinds of compounds. And what these compounds do for plants is they strengthen their immune system. They make a really big difference for the roots of the plants. Here in Florida, that's a very important thing because our soil is sand. So having strong roots is very critical. But Wriggle Brew does one other thing that I think is really impressive that other fertilizers just really don't do. And that is that it assists in helping plants fight off pests. So that means not just things like, aphids and mealybugs, but it also means certain kinds of diseases and scale and fungi and things like that. So fertilizers, they just provide nutrients that plants can use to grow, but Wriggle Brew is providing nutrients and providing a boost to the plant's immune system and its microbial defenses. And as a result, the plant is much more likely to survive things like nematodes or spider mites or all kinds of other biting insects. For a homeowner, what this means is you can take a bottle of Wriggle Brew and you can
Got it. Showing us now. I love
this
it.
is actually an old bottle, but but you can take a bottle and you can use it and you can spray it on your plants if they're struggling. So the name of the actual product really is Growth and Rescue. Wriggle Brew is kind of the brand, but the Growth and Rescue, you can use it as a growth aid, as a fertilizer. You can water it down. It turns into 8 gallons of fertilizer just by mixing. Or you can use the sprayer that comes with it and actually spray it on trouble spots where you see plants are maybe yellowing or maybe having some biting insects or things like that. So it's really good for people with a garden. If you have a garden bed or if you have potted plants or indoor plants, because unlike a lot of other organic stuff like manures and fish poop and stuff, this does not have a smell. It is odorless, and that makes a huge, huge difference for people who are not fond of having fish poop smell in their living room.
Right. And I have pets. I have a dog, and I have little kids, 8, 6, and 4. Is it safe for them?
Absolutely. Actually, that is another really good point. So it is far, far safer than any other fertilizer. So if you spill, some nitrogen or phosphorus fertilizer on your hands, the instructions usually say you need to wash your hands for like 20 minutes. God forbid you get it in your eyes and you don't want to drink it. You drink that, you're going to the hospital.
Sure.
While Wriggle Brew, I wouldn't recommend drinking it. Gabe actually has done that a few times. It's kind of gross, but it is completely food safe. Everything involved in it. It has really no smell. Apparently, it just kind of tastes like dirt. So if you spray it on your tomatoes or whatever, and your dog bites into it, you have more to worry about from the tomato than from the fertilizer.
Wow.
Same thing for houseplants, kids, anything like that. When we were first bottling the stuff, we were literally just dunking bottles into it with our bare hands, when we were doing experiments. So it's completely safe.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
That's so awesome. And you mentioned it earlier in the podcast and touched on it now with the nitrogen and the phosphate. Aren't those the two key elements of concern for runoff into our waterways?
100%. Yeah. So there's a lot of legislation being passed to limit both the production and the use of nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers. Those are the ones that contribute to runoff. They contribute to red tide. So here in Florida, we have the red tide, especially in like Tampa and in the Atlantic. All these algal blooms happen, and then massive fish kills happen. So that's really bad, and that's really driven primarily by phosphorus and by nitrogen.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Well, like I said earlier, Sam, and just to reiterate to the listener, when I was doing research about you and your company, I was so impressed with your product. I went ahead and bought it for myself, and it should be here any day. So I have houseplants and a home garden with my kids outside with vegetables and all that, and fruit trees. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I encourage you to. My dad uses it on all of his fig trees and stuff, and my mom uses it on her little garden. So people found it works really well in just about everything you could find in a garden or backyard.
Great. That's thank you for sharing that. And this is going to be my last question or just thought process is you're obviously an entrepreneur. You're 24 years old. You've accomplished more than probably most 30 somethings listening to this. And the sky is the limit for you. I can tell. It's just obvious. Anyone that meets you would probably think the same thing. What is a key tip you can offer to either someone who's already an entrepreneur and is just getting started, or someone who has dreams of being an entrepreneur? What's like one, if you could boil it down to one key tip or tips, what would it be?
I will repeat the same thing my uncle told me, because my uncle was also an entrepreneur. And when I first started doing this, he said, Sam, there's only two things that you need to ever be as a businessman to succeed. And he said, you need to have stamina and you need to have aggression. Those were the two things that he said. And he didn't mean aggression in the sense of like getting mad or like, getting angry at people, but he meant like going after opportunities. Right. So for us, the whole reason we got started was because of the Joust, because of the competition. I saw it on a poster in the student union. I had the aggression to go after that and try that, and it worked. Not all the time it does. A lot of times I've tried things and it fails, but the process of science is one where you're trying lots of things.
Trial and error, yeah.
Trial and error, exactly. So you have to be aggressive. You have to go after opportunities as they come along, even ones that you may not even fully understand why they're, going to be that good. And you have to have the stamina to stick with it. So you have to continue, doing the really boring parts of the business, like keeping a calendar and, writing down contacts and following up with contacts. You have to have the stamina to do that. If you can stay in the fight long enough and you can keep your head in the fight long enough, then eventually you will win something.
I love it. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of advocating for action. And, it's not that one person is any smarter than the other in the average world. It's the person that takes the action on the thing.
Yeah.
That's going to succeed.
There are plenty of people smarter than me in my program, in my class, but why we did well is because we went after a lot of things. We took action, and anyone can do that.
That's awesome. Sam Baker, founder, CEO of Wriggle Brew. I couldn't be more impressed with you. You're very busy. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be on my podcast. I know the listener out there is surely more educated on all kinds of stuff. You're an entrepreneur, UCF grad, Eagle Scout, and part-time inventor, a legitimate inventor, competition winner, and for all accounts, a successful business owner. I just want to remind everybody out there that you can buy Wriggle Brew right on Amazon. Doesn't get any easier than that. You could also buy it on Sam's website at wrigglebrew.com. Do you have a preference, Sam, which way they do that?
Whatever's easier for them. Yeah, just happy to get it in your hands.
Perfect. So I'm going to include a direct link from Amazon on the episode description. If you're on YouTube, and all your platforms, it'll be below. I'll include Sam's website, wrigglebrew.com. And in that same area is where you're going to find my cell phone number. Text me or call me at any time. I'll get back to you. I'm Phil Kruse. That's Kruse with a K, Kruse. A portion of all my real estate commissions go to charity. I'm a listing specialist. I have a whole podcast episode devoted to the auction effect, which is what I call the process of having your home sell fast and at the highest price within the very first weekend of it being listed. And I'm telling you what bidding wars are coming. I just did my last episode about it. So while you're there as well, getting my information or Sam's, like and subscribe to my podcast, or on YouTube, subscribe. Find me on social media. I'm posting all kinds of interesting reels about new neighborhoods, things going on in Orlando. I have a weekend post every Friday about my 5 top things going on in Orlando that weekend. Got one dropping on Friday. So I'm doing my best to help and inform. And I'm just here to serve you out there. And always know that your best life in Orlando is within reach. Keep embracing every moment. Cheers. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.